So I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. I know a lot of you, but my name is Jevin Gibb. I'm Economic Development Director for Salt Lake County. This program, the Economic Inclusion Community Assistance Program, is coming out of the Salt Lake County Office of Regional Development. So today we've got, and I'm going to introduce some of the people who are involved in this. So Samantha Thermos is the Economic Recovery Program Manager associated with our department. And then my boss, Dina Blaze, is the Director of the Office of Regional Development. We've also got a couple other staff involved here. For a lot of the purposes of this program, you're going to be talking with Samantha, but you've also got me in the background as well. Really excited to talk with you today about this program. I think it's an awesome opportunity for us to work out in the community and work with partners like you and like others that we've talked with about this program. And I won't get much into the details because we'll talk about it as we get into this. But this is kind of opportunity for us to talk with you about what's in the RFA, what the requirements will be. This will be recorded so that our partners who can't be here today can go through it for information purposes. But we're looking forward to talking with you and hopefully to working with you. Jordan, next slide.
Thank you, Jevin. Appreciate that introduction. So we're going to have an agenda right here posted, and that's to talk about the actual Economic Inclusion Community Assistance Program. We'll provide an overview of why Salt Lake County created such a program, talking about the need that we feel is out there and opportunities to learn more as well as to help with that need. We'll talk about the application process and timeline. Then we'll work through our frequently asked questions, and I will do a demonstration for you of the application, showing you how to kind of go in and enter your information before submitting it. And then we'll do a Q&A, plenty of time for lots of conversation at the end. But feel free, of course, during the presentation to ask questions as well. Great.
So the goal here, we're really worried about the K-shaped recovery from COVID-19. This is the idea that coming out of the pandemic, some communities are bouncing back much slower or continuing to see negative effects. And let's be honest, that a lot of this is just making even more severe the inequality that exists before the pandemic. So these existing economic gaps are getting wider. What we see though is, and this is a program a lot about economic opportunity and the ability of every person in every community to achieve their potential. So you'll hear us talk today about opportunity communities and opportunity businesses. These are communities and businesses that have experienced less economic opportunity in the past, or where economic opportunity gaps exist, where elevating to that potential could create tremendous impact in those people's lives, but in the economy and in our community overall, with the idea that everybody wins if people achieve their potential. We also acknowledge that one of the reasons for these opportunity gaps is about inclusion and whether people trust the resources, feel connected to those resources, or understand how to use them. So we'd like to find creative solutions, leveraging our community partners and the facilitators they can provide to overcome those hurdles. So just some technical details. This is going to be a 6-month program. And one of the ways that we've talked about this is a pilot program. It's a learning experience so that we can work with our community partners to understand the gaps that exist and how we connect businesses with the resources that identify those gaps. So we'll do this pilot or this prototype for 6 months. The contracts may be extended for 2 months just to close out and for final payment. And hopefully what we want to do is use this 6 months to learn so that we can create a more long-term, sustainable, permanent solution. So going back to the initial discussion, to be successful, we have to overcome these inclusion barriers. How do we connect businesses with the resources necessary to achieve their potential? And here, what we didn't want to do is to say, we're the government, now we'll create a service, we'll be the solution. Here, the idea is, we're confident that community partners have existing relationships, established networks, and the cultural awareness that is necessary to solve these problems, necessary to have the relationship, to have a conversation about what the problem is and why existing resources or solutions have failed, and to work through that iterative problem-solving process to figure out how we achieve the outcomes that we're going for. And so what we're trying to do with this program is work with the community partners to effectively assist small business owners, connect them with resources, and to provide the assistance necessary to prepare for resources. And for an explanation there, I think one of the things that we saw with programs like PPP or EIDL or whatever acronym you want to talk about for a lot of the federal programs that have been provided in the past, those were great. And the federal government put out a lot of money that could help small businesses. But a lot of small businesses said, yep, but I don't have accounting software. I can't tell you what my payroll expenses were last year. I've got everything in Venmo. And so the problem became, how do you get those companies' operations and onto paper enough for them to apply to banks for things like those programs? How do you get the less organized businesses to be able to jump through the hoops necessary to get access to resources? And this is, again, it takes those community partners' understanding of what's really going on with a business and how to communicate to make sure that we have the right solution and that we understand the real problems in order to create those connections. So next slide, Jordan.
So the scope of work, I think some of you have probably went online already and had the opportunity to look at the RFA as well as the early release of some information. So you'll see in there, there's different parts and pieces that really talk about the background and why we're trying to achieve this. Like Jevin said, it's really a program that we hope can go on past the 6 months. We're looking to take these 6 months and get as much information as we can. We would like to fund partners, community partners that apply for this grant to work with businesses that are experiencing the economic opportunity gaps. Again, there could be an organizational gap that they have. It could be technical training pieces of some sort, or it could be something along the lines of applying for a grant. The second goal is to work with partners to create a feedback loop, meaning that the county is hoping to learn and receive information from the community partners about what some of the issues are. Are there themes to these issues? Are these issues short and just COVID? Are these longer and bigger issues, so that we can look at those results and say, how can we help more? How can we be more of service to these businesses that sometimes get left behind, sometimes just don't know the information of existing resources, or just need a little bit of help from a professional to give them some guidance along their path of moving towards a better direction. So again, we're looking to put in more capacity and surge in the communities of helping those who were affected by COVID-19 in their businesses through resources of partners and facilitators that can help adjust and move them forward in their efforts to be a successful business and get through the COVID pandemic strains that it's caused.
So how does this money get paid out? So let's just kind of take a step back first. And one of the things, I'm looking at the slide and realizing we haven't talked about the facilitators yet, because the idea is that community partners would provide a facilitator. Or if you don't have someone that you would like to serve as a facilitator to work with the businesses that you have connections with, you could work with us and we could try to help identify a facilitator to work with you. So it is the county paying a community partner to provide a facilitator that is actively working with businesses. Our expectations are focused on number of businesses served, resources that facilitators connect businesses with, and the identification of resource gaps. So what we're thinking is, as a community partner, you have relationships, you have cultural awareness, you have this knowledge of the experience of your communities. With a facilitator, that person can be pushed out into the community, not working on administrative tasks, not working in your back office, but actively engaging with businesses to understand what the problems are. Are they able to take to access all of the resources that are available? If not, why? And once you understand the why, okay, how do those problems start getting solved? Do you need to connect them with someone at, the SBDC? Do you need to connect them with someone at, the many different centers around the county? Do you need to provide them kind of the logistical support to get, Venmo transactions sufficiently cataloged that you can, satisfy federal aid requirements? But that requires getting people out into the community or having conversations, however possible, given the restraints of COVID, to understand what the problems are. Also, organizations cannot use these funds for projects previously budgeted or for revenue replacement. We want to do new things. So this isn't about kind of funding, gaps in budgets. It's more about or plussing up budgets. It's about, again, thinking about that K-shaped recovery. We've got so many businesses that are off the radar or that aren't getting included in this recovery. And this is why we talk so much about inclusion here. So we need to kind of push this surge capacity out to figure out how we can help. So that's the big goal here. Next slide, Burden.
So talking about the minimum qualifications and requirements, we're looking for partners, community partners who already operate in Salt Lake County. They already do business and assist clients that are in the Salt Lake County area. We're looking for folks to be, or community partners to be, not a for-profit entity, meaning a 501c3 or 501c6 or other nonprofits. We'd like them to have been operating in business for at least 3 years. If the 3 years hasn't been reached, we welcome an explanation of better understanding of why you might be able to fulfill the contract needs, as well as the contract timeline or time period that you would provide those services. And then online, there is an application, that's your RFA, that has got questions that walk you through how to do that. But it's got basic information that it needs in there, such as legal name, description of your past services you've already provided, some of the relationships you already have with what we call the small businesses or local businesses. We refer to them as opportunity business enterprises. And then information necessary to look at what services you would provide going forward. How would you help identify companies in the community that need this sort of service or efforts? And then how would you be able to fulfill those? What would your plan or program be? Perhaps how many staff or facilitators would you have being on this program? How long would it take? How many clients do you think you might serve? These are some ideas of the questions and the things that we need in the minimum qualifications of the request for application. Community partners. This slide here really represents that community partners will be working with me throughout the process from beginning to end. If you have questions on the application, if your facilitators get out on the field and start doing some initial trainings and want to talk about connecting with more folks, if there's more resources that they want to start referring folks to, we can also provide those. Partners will be submitting that information in a bi-weekly report to us, just sharing how many companies they helped, what do they specifically help with, what do you think future needs of that company is, if you might be working with that company. We'd really like that information. We have a bi-weekly report. Partners will be paid on a monthly basis, but reports are due on a bi-weekly basis. There can be requests for additional disbursements after the first month. There's an online form that will be available to you to be able to request that payment. And then there's a monthly meeting. So we're going to get the partners together each month to talk about training, more needs or information, themes they're seeing, so that when they go out for the following month, we're more equipped and we're all looking the same direction on helping improve businesses and their survivability during COVID by talking to each other and communicating as a group. All right. So we're going to get a little technical. This just talks about the bi-weekly reports. This is where you detail the businesses that you would assist. We call them opportunity business enterprises. And their basic reveals we've already mentioned before, but hours worked, if there's an issue that's been addressed, which resources did you connect them with, and so many other things that you already probably know. The information will be populated the very first time you go in with anything that you put in there. So when you go back the next time to report, it will pull it right back up for you so you can see, okay, this is the company, I did 3 hours this time period, I'm going to give them 6 more hours in this time period. It will be up there for you. It'll be a simple process to turn that information in so we can get reports and understand some of the work. The county will provide training on the reporting requirements, not just this training here, but we're also going to have an initial training, which we're going to talk about in just a second, where partners who might have difficulty providing reports can get help or work through me to get those reports in and feel comfortable with them. And we do expect the reports, but again, please call me or contact me. I'd be happy to help you work through any kind of reporting issues.
So how does this work? The costs and fees. So what we're saying is we understand that there's a lot of unknowns built into this program. You know, you're probably not sure how many hours you're going to be able to provide, you know, especially 6 months down the line. So we've tried to make this a flexible system. In your application, you will be asked to estimate, you know, how many hours you think you can provide over 6 months. But again, there will be flexibility. Given those, you know, that initial estimate, that will be used to calculate your total initial contracted amount. And then that amount will be dispersed monthly. So, yeah, I apologize for being a little clunky in how I'm explaining this right now. But you will say in the first month, you know, I think I'm going to provide one facilitator. That facilitator is going to work about 30 hours a week. So maybe that's 120 hours. As a result, the county would say, okay, so you've got 120 hours, and then you estimated for 6 months that's, you know, 720 hours total. That, you know, total contracted amount of $720, or sorry, 720 hours, you get paid more than $1 an hour, gets dispersed in monthly increments at $25 per hour. So you can also request that you receive reimbursement for fixed or indirect costs. For there, though, we need you to provide a justification. If there are certain, you know, costs that you incur in order to get this program started, let us know. You know, a lot of this has been built around the idea that we're paying, you know, that hourly fee to get the facilitator out into the community. And so we've got this $25 per hour variable cost model. But if there are those kind of fixed or upfront costs, let us know, explain it. We don't guarantee that they'll be approved, but we'll consider them. The other piece is part of that $25 per hour may go to cover your admin costs, so long as you pay your facilitators at least $12 per hour. You know, we want to make sure folks are getting paid, but we realize that you'll probably incur some admin costs. So part of that amount can be directed toward the admin costs. Payment will be upfront. We realize these are new programs for community partners. So we'll make that month's payment upfront. So day one, you will have already been paid for 1 month of work. You'll then request follow-on disbursements, and the process for this is set out in detail in the RFA. So look through the costs and fees section, but you'll say, you know, for month 2, here's the number of hours that I'm going to provide, and then you would be paid for that. Acknowledging that we're building flexibility into this, if you estimate that you're going to provide 500 hours and you burn through that in the first 4 months, you can request more. So we're trying to say that, you know, there's a lot of unknowns. As if you provide all of those services, ask more. If there's more money available, we will then consider that request. You can also carry forward. If you say in the first month, I think I'm going to provide, you know, 100 hours of services, and you only provide 80, carry that 20 forward to the next month. We'll adjust kind of the monthly payment. But if you don't use up the number of hours, that's also fine. Just, you know, return payment for hours on that kind of prorated basis. For invoicing, there are invoices that we'll provide to you in order to request payment for the county. We'll also request that you do those reporting requirements that Samantha talked about, helping us learn about what you're doing, the problems you're solving, the number of hours you're working, and the businesses that you're working with. And, because we need to make sure that these are kind of complied with, failure to do the reporting requirements can result in termination. So for the application, how will we consider it? This is really broken down, and if you look in the RFA, each of these, first three categories correlate with a category in the RFA. So past services and relevant experience, this 30%. What have you done? How are you connected with the community? What have you been doing with your community? How have you been helping these opportunity business enterprises in the past? Project team, who's your leadership? Do you have a facilitator proposed? It's a lot about the connection of your leadership and your team with opportunity communities and opportunity business enterprises. And then 30%, what's the plan? And this is about what are the problems that you've identified in the community, or what is your plan for identifying problems in the community? What sort of approach will you take to that? What sort of learning system will you put in place? And how do you plan to solve it? So a lot of this is, acknowledging the unknowns. How do you intend to kind of create the change that we're talking about here? And then 10%, that's agreement to the terms of the RFA.
All right, we're going to spend just a minute talking about the timeline because it wasn't in the RFA, of course, but it is in the frequently asked questions and on the web page for you. We've already sent the advance notice, of course, and today is the request for application was released, and we're having the webinar. There's another date in between the webinar and RFA release and the applications due on April 7th. It's a soft date. It is April 2nd, which is this coming Friday. It's a soft date, but it's a date to keep in mind in regard to submitting questions. So if you have questions as you walk through the application, if you have questions about this webinar, perhaps as you read through the actual RFA, there's something that you really want to talk about, please contact me. Hopefully you can do that by this Friday, April 2nd. So just keep that one in mind for questions and conversations. I do have time on my schedule planned to answer those for folks. The applications are then due the following Wednesday. So not this Wednesday, but next week on Wednesday the 7th. On the 9th, which is just 2 days later, on Friday, we will let applicants know whether they have been accepted or not accepted into the program and let you know that specific information there on that Friday. When we do that on Friday, things are going to kind of move a little bit fast in regard to getting things going. We will be doing and drawing up contracts that following week. So the week of the 15th, we'll be drawing up and getting you contracts and would like contracts returned, signed, any changes or questions, all of that done and finalized by the 15th so we can start the program. As you noticed this morning on some of the information, the program is from approximately April 15th to October 15th, which are with a couple months to clean up and, of course, finalize any kind of reporting. The 16th, we offer training. That's Friday. That's from 1 to 5 p.m. It will be virtual training such as this, a webinar. And we'll be training community partners who have identified leadership within their organization that will be providing the services to the small local businesses, what we call opportunity business enterprises. Training to talk about understanding more about the reporting requirements, understanding about what else is going on in the community, for them to learn who the other facilitators are in the community. So that's a really good thing for people to learn is who else in the community is going to be out doing this good work and meeting this capacity out there.
Hey,
and
Samantha,
then as you can, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for jumping in.
No.
But one of the things that I just realized we haven't hit on much is this initial training requirement for the facilitators. So your facilitator must attend an initial training before you begin getting compensated for their work. And so this is the half-day training that's listed here for April 16. If for some reason your facilitator can't attend that one, we will set up follow-on trainings. Our goal, though, is to have every facilitator that is approved at that point attend the initial training on April 16th from 1 to 5 p.m. and so that they can kind of get that orientation to the program so that we make sure everybody has that baseline before they start getting out in the community. Sorry,
Thanks for bringing that up. No, that's okay. Thank you for bringing that up. In the RFA, we listed as initial training, but this is the same thing. It's called facilitator training. So it's the initial training for facilitators is what we call it. And then you can see the program timeline again to the end of the year. And then we hope to see what the results are and look about continuing the program out of a pilot and into a more of a permanent program if we have success and we feel like needs are being met by those in the community that need it most. All right, we're going to flip over to go online so we can show you the frequently asked questions section. If you haven't had a chance to look, this is the initial first page, and you just scroll down towards the bottom of this initial page and you will see that they're available several questions for you if you have any. Everything from when the application is open, what can the grant funds be used for? That's something some people want to see specifically is what the grants funds can be applied for right there, talks about it in detail. Then we have other questions that go on further, more specifically about your business, talking about the other businesses that you might help. And so we hope that this FAQ that's been published today will be helpful towards some of your thoughts on the process and participating in this grant opportunity. And we'll talk more about these, but you can just see that it lists all kinds of information that should be helpful towards your thinking about putting an application in and putting an application together for us. And then we'll go to the next one, which is talking about the way you're going to turn your application in through our what they call the Smart Sheets program. Give it just 1 second, we'll load it up. So when you were on the site earlier today that was directed, you'll see to the left, this is the RFA. So you can reference it as you answer your questions. If you have any other questions about something specific in the RFA, it'll be there for you. The instructions that I would recommend thinking most about is preparing your application before you start to actually apply. There's not a way to save your draft work, unfortunately, on here. So we recommend maybe putting it into another document ahead of time. We recommend scrolling through it and identifying what documents, what information, the numbers, the point of contact, information about your previous services, the services you'll be providing, the plan for that. Perhaps have all those together first before you jump in here and do it that way. You're not stuck having your information erased through not being able to save it because you're not done. So the questions here, if you have any questions, you can call me. They almost all are required questions. So as you look at them and you read through them, almost all of them are required and not necessarily optional because we do need the information. We only put bare bones requests for information here so that we didn't bog you down in information that isn't needed and you could get through the application in a short time manner. You can also have the application emailed to you by submitting it and hitting send me a copy of my responses, plugging in your email address, and then you'll receive a copy of your answers and the application together in one email. That'll also, you'll receive a second email that tells you you have submitted. It's an automatic email and it will tell you that your application has been submitted and that the county has received your information, your full application. So if you hit this one right here where it says send me a copy of my responses, you'll receive 2 emails. If you don't hit that, send me a copy, you'll still receive an email from the county that's automated and says, hey, we have received your submission for the county. We've got it here. So that's helpful to have that reassurance of seeing your application, but also knowing that it's been received by the county for your purposes of applying on time. When we have training, we'll do further training on Smart Sheets. This will be the program and software that we use for the whole program. So anything else that's done in the program with any sort of reporting will be in the same system. So once you've used this once, you'll kind of get really used to the same system throughout the process of the grant to the end. So I will wrap up with letting you know that you can reach me anytime by phone or email. I'm really the technical person of this, as you can tell by the conversation. to kind of get into the nitty gritty with you or the weeds and figure out your plans or your programs, answer questions about the forward motion thinking, as well as maybe some of the work that your organization has done. I'll be putting together the training, the initial training. If you have ideas or concepts on anything you'd like to hear on that piece, welcome to take that. Jevin is really the visionary for this. His work is really thinking through the issues and the gaps in the community and how do we solve those. So if you understand the roles is, please help reach yourself out to me, and I would be happy to assist in technical work. And then Jevin, if you have bigger concepts, you can always email those to me as time goes on, and Jevin will take those into consideration. So thank you for everyone coming, and I would like to open it up to questions or discussion from anyone in the audience that you can chat. It looks like we have one in there.
The one thing that I'd raise, when we talk about the reporting requirements, the smart sheet form that you see for the application looks like a standard web form. For the reporting requirements, it's going to look a lot like an Excel spreadsheet. And the goal there is to make it easy for you to export. We don't want to create one more program, another CRM or some other, cumbersome software that you have to put things into. The goal is, however you want to track it, whether it's, whether you have a CRM or if you want to put it into an Excel spreadsheet, we'd love for this to be a copy paste exercise, because the real big thing is, once a month when facilitators come together, that's where we'd love the energy to be put forth, which is, how's it going? What problems have you found? How are you solving them? How can we help you find the resources you need? Our goal is to make this, to reduce the administrative burden as much as possible, while creating as much of a feedback loop as possible so that we can learn through this process. And a lot of it is learning how to do better. So
thanks, Joan, for that wrap up. Appreciate it. Questions? It looks like we have one in the chat talking about interpretation and guidance to obtain services. This would be a good opportunity potentially for refugee services. We think that could be a barrier to some organizations who want to apply for, say, PPP, but don't know how. And those services to translate would be really helpful for them to figure out how to put a full application in. It would also help to make referrals to other nonprofits maybe doing some work. Maybe there's a program at Salt Lake Community College. Maybe there's a program at Swazo Center that could teach them some business technical skills, perhaps some planning and strategic work in their work that they do. And so having that would be great to have them understand that in their own language and hopefully knock a barrier down. Is one of the things we've learned is potentially one of the big issues for folks. So yes, I think that would be a great opportunity to apply.
And one of the things,
me?
yes.
Sorry. I was just going to try to get some clarification, because I, as a potential, or should I say, party to get involved in this program, is nonprofit, but an organization, the so-called that I'm, or it's called the OBE, that organization, does that also have to be nonprofit? That can be a for-profit, right? So because the refugee community is large, I mean, you have individual refugees, you have refugee organizations, you have for-profit refugee businesses, because they've moved past the refugee stage and become citizens and business owners. And so, so far, my agency has been just dealing with specifically those refugees who demonstratively do not know English, because we couple them with an interpreter and guides 24/7. And so that's how my agency pays them, actually, because this is not all voluntary, you know what I mean? And so and we also teach them English and so forth, because they need to be on their own and they need to know their way around, because that's the other problem, lack of acculturation. So we haven't really, but I can see potentially those folks who moved on from being individuals and also the grassroots refugee organizations to business ones. And so no, in that case, they're obviously for-profit, you know what I mean? So myself, the participant in this program has to be nonprofit, but my beneficiary doesn't have to be a nonprofit. And the other issue, I don't want to take up too much of time here, but the other thing is that since I have not really played a role yet where I am working with the for-profit businesses owned by refugees, with this issue of what issue they have and where are the resources to address that issue, to give them relief from this problem or whatever it is, because I would need to have a familiarization or something, some kind of a survey, I might say, research or some such, to figure out what are the typical problems that they have and where are the resources. I mean, I don't want to be spending 4 months or whatever months, here's a refugee, and they need a loan or some such, and it takes me a month to find out where to get that loan or some such, you know what I mean? So I need to identify the major problem. So I need to do kind of a survey as to what are the problems that these folks have and where are the resources, so that I quickly put them together.
So let's break that into two parts, because the first one is pretty straightforward as far as our goal is to fund nonprofits like you to work with business enterprises. So they do not, the goal is for them to be business enterprises. To the second part, the initial training, the goal of that is to give this kind of wide, I guess, man, I'm struggling with the word here, but to bring in experts who are familiar with all the resources available in the region, because our expectation is not that you're an expert in every class or training or resource that's available to companies. We're going to bring in that expertise, and we will always be available to answer those questions. If you say, I talked with a business owner today, and here's the problem, is there something available? Man, I'd love to answer that question, because we know those things. The problem is we don't have your relationships in those communities. And so the goal is for you to be able to go out and talk with businesses, or the facilitator to go out and talk with businesses. And when the business says, my problem is this, if you don't automatically know the resource, you come back and we start helping you find those.
Okay, sounds good. My last question really, and then I'm done. And that is whether this kind of a program would allow a little phase there of, sort of a research survey, because there are not hundreds of these businesses. There are, and many of them we're familiar with. I mean, that they exist, who they are. But we need to kind of do at least, not an exhaustive survey, but it's certainly a good sampling survey as what the typical problem of these folks are and where the resources. So would that something, is there an activity, a task that could be, would that be considered a viable thing? This is my last question.
That's something that you could probably put in as an upfront fixed cost. How much does it cost for you to do that survey?
Yeah, because I mean, that sets me up for failure or success, kind of, from my point of view. You know what I mean? As to how many of these are, why are the problems? And then I am kind of, if I have no clue, then most of the program is spent trying to figure that out. So anyway. Good.
Well, and I'll say one more thing on that. One of the reasons why we're doing the 1 month funding up front is that we acknowledge that there's going to be some kind of learning initially. Now, the one thing, if it takes multiple months to do that, it's not going to work really great with this 6 month program.
Of course. That's why I said not an exhaustive thing, but it's critical. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But the goal is to fund you up front to be able to get moving toward that. But again, our expectation is help us understand the businesses you're interacting with, and kind of progress is measured by number of businesses. We're not going to be nickel and diming this to say, you talked with 100 businesses and somebody else talked with 115. So this is
actually, you and I would be asking the same question. I would be asking that question as to who am I dealing with? What is the size of the problem? At least some realistic estimate. What are the issues? And then go, thank you. That's all I need. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, the one thing that I was going to bring up from the previous question, and this is something that was raised with me where it was a learning experience, because I thought about this, again, in terms of that variable cost and it being all about one person out in the community, doing this one at a time with business and business and business. You've also got the opportunity, if you think it's almost like a platform approach, if you solve one problem for multiple businesses, you don't necessarily have to do this one at a time. So if you can, without having someone locked into doing a bunch of administrative tasks, provide a service that solves something for 100 businesses, just explain that to us in the application, that you have a little different business model. And really, we want to be flexible in how we look at these solutions to problems, because again, we're not the experts in the problems. Help us understand how you're going to solve it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Looks like Anne had her hand up first. Anne?
Hi there. Thank you for doing this, everyone. I appreciate it very much. And thank you for mentioning communities that speak languages other than English. I'm an interpreter myself of sign language, so I appreciate that moment. I understand the terms and the conditions and the specs of this particular round, this preliminary offering. I'm wondering about the appetite for expanding for micro enterprise for-profit businesses to help one another. I personally am not eligible for this program, but I could certainly help people do what I do and spread the love that, you know, we do this in and among ourselves anyway, but it would be lovely to have it more systematized or more a matter of record. So as you say, I could approach another institution or lender or whomever to say, hey, I've done this thing. So is there an appetite, not in this round, obviously, because you guys are, you've already done a great amount of work and I love this, but is there an appetite for micro enterprise for profit? A woman in a tent, such as me, for example.
So one of the things we really kind of spent a while thinking about this, we've got a regulatory requirement that prevents us from funding for-profits. That being said, find a nonprofit to work with. The nonprofits also need facilitators, but we cannot fund for-profits.
Good point.
Jevin, do you want to, could you spend a little bit, another minute on that vision? Because I think that's something that we didn't have too much on, is that facilitators and the organization don't have to be part of the same organization. We can partner up with people. We gonna spend a minute on that? So,
I mean, the facilitator will be attached to the community partner, but they don't necessarily need to be the same thing. So here's the thing, you know, the community partners, these are nonprofit organizations that have been working with opportunity communities for years. They've been building that relationship. Now, I'd say most community partners with whom I've talked are wildly underfunded and understaffed, and they are doing amazing work on shoestring budgets. So they're not going to automatically say like, hey, I've got somebody with 30 hours free. They have somebody who has been working, you know, 70 hours a week for a long time. This is additional capacity, and that's why we talked about it as surge capacity. They may have somebody that they can identify as a facilitator. They may need to be connected to a facilitator. Our payments will be to the nonprofit, and then the nonprofit will pass through to the facilitator. So we're not, and so what the nonprofit needs to do when they submit their application to us is if there's a facilitator that they would prefer to work with, provide that person's information, and then they control that relationship.
That makes sense. And it would be good to have SMEs. Like if you have a business for making cornbread or a business for preparing tax forms, you would need different subject matter expertise maybe on the part of the facilitators. That makes sense.
Thanks, Jevin. I appreciate that. I think that was really thoughtful for people.
Is there anything else we should add to that, Samantha?
I think that one's good. I think the way you covered it is good. That's a component that's really important, is not everybody's going to have all the facilitators on hand potentially, but they have other partners they do business with that could act as a facilitator through their organization. I think that's a great point. Liz has her hand up. Liz?
Yeah, actually my question is related to this because I'm here representing the Utah LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce, and we are completely volunteer run. So it's kind of a two-part question, and I wasn't thinking about, like Anne mentioned or brought up, that we could recruit some facilitators to work with us. But initially what I was going to ask was, let's say as an organization, we can commit to, I'm just pulling out of thin air, 10 hours a week, but that would be shared time between 3 different people. Yeah, 3 different volunteers all have 3 hours a week kind of thing. Does that fit in with your model? Could we bring 3 people to the training?
Of course.
Part of it. Okay, that
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
Look, and we acknowledge we're coming into this with a level of humility. We don't know what's going to work for our partners. So let us know what works for you. And, so long as there's a clear identification of the problem and the way you're going to solve it, that's great. Let's learn together.
Well, I'll just put a little plug in. Anyone on the call who wants to be a facilitator. If like Ann or anyone else who wouldn't qualify on their own, if anyone's interested in partnering up with the LGBT chamber, something we would be interested in talking about. Are we going to share everybody's contact info or?
I may be able to help with that. Jevin and I can talk about that. We talked about the opportunity for me to do the technical work, meaning linking up facilitators with organizations. And so we'll do some work behind the scenes and get back to folks on this question for you. No problem at all.
Thanks very much. Cool.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions about the program or specifics?
I see Claire with her hand raised.
Oh, Claire.
Hi, thank you. I'm with the small business team at the International Rescue Committee. And within our one office, we kind of host 3 different small business programs: New Roots, Spice Kitchen Incubator, and then the General Micro Enterprise Program. And I just wanted to ask if it's possible to have all 3 programs submit unique applications. While it's all small business, all 3 programs do pretty unique things. And while we could probably get by with one facilitator for each, I just wanted to ask if that's a possibility.
Sure. I'm thinking about the logistics on your end. The thing that will be affected by the number of applications is the number of entities that are paid. So if for tracking purposes, but if it's the same entity that's getting paid, this sounds like something that we would work out on the back end. If you've got different people and it makes it simpler, I'm sorry, I'm going to hem and haw on this a little bit. It would be more straightforward to receive one application from one organization, but if for the application purpose you'd like to submit 3 different ones, we'll figure it out, and Samantha and I will work with you on the back end.
Thank you, appreciate that. And no guarantees you'll see 3 applications. It will probably be easier for us to just do one, but thank you, I appreciate that.
Liz, your hand is still up. Did you just forget to put it down? Or do you have another question? All right.
I don't see any other hands up. Anyone else have any questions?
I'm assuming that an organization would have more than one facilitator.
Maybe. It's okay. One is fine if you think you have capacity for more, or if you'd like to spread your hours out across more people, that's fine as well. I think it will be different for every organization.
Yeah, because in my case, we have more than one person who specializes in more than one community. So I'm not a Somali. It's a community I serve in the back end, but I am familiar with the South Asian community. And so I have multiple people, you know what I'm saying? I have Iraqis, I have Somalis, and so I have Afghans. You get my drift. So, yes.
Yeah, and again, this is where we say, we're trying to take as flexible an approach as possible. So the application will ask you how many facilitators you think you can use. If you have facilitators that you already know that you would like preferred to work with you, you provide their CVs, but there's flexibility built in there to just respond to however you think you can put these services together.
Catherine, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm just wondering, I think I know the answer to this already, but I'm wondering if you if like local governments are and municipalities are eligible, or if it's just nonprofits.
I think we're just going nonprofits. So if you want to talk with us more on the back end, I know you. Get in touch.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Liz, you had another
Hey.
question? Oh, I'm sorry, Jevin, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that we haven't emphasized here, and in the RFA, we do lay out the definitions of opportunity business enterprises. But one of the things when you think about your communities and if any opportunity gaps exist, we're taking an approach where it really is, if it's race, gender, disability, geography, there are many reasons why, despite the overall wealth and opportunity that exists in Salt Lake County, that some places have not experienced the same levels. So when you think about how you qualify or how your opportunity business enterprises might qualify or the opportunity communities look in the RFA, and also make the explanation to us as well as far as where the opportunity gap exists.
I did just have a quick
Liz,
follow-up.
yeah.
The question of facilitators, and apologies, I've not looked at the RFA yet, just at the emails. What if the organizational capacity, I know 6 months is a pretty short time period, but what if our organizational capacity changed drastically 3 months from now and we want to provide more service?
Well, that's where we say you can request more if you exhaust it early. And
Gotcha.
it's built
Okay.
in there so that, if you ran out in 3 months because, there was just a lot of demand or you had more capacity, then you'd go back and we've got a form that you would submit and say, hey, I said that I'd do 300 hours. I think I can actually hit 600. Are there funds available? And what we will try to fund as much services as possible. We'll probably keep some, we'll be judicious about how quickly we allot those additional funds, but we will try to hold funds back with the expectation that partners will come back for more, with the hope that this goes so well that partners need to come back for more.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Cool.
I do have a question. So since this is all nonprofit based and we're not exactly sure what types of services or facilitators we're going to need, are you going to come back out to us to ask for help if you need some help? Because we have people within the community that I can go out to on my end to see if they can become facilitators for other businesses, because I don't have very many nonprofits within my city. And so, but I do have businesses, but that could probably provide some education for the things that you need. But the only way we can do that is if someone communicates that with us.
That'd be, and Sherry, I'm having a long day moment. Remind me where you're from again.
Cottonwood Heights City?
Yeah, of course. Yes. So what we've done is the same group that has received a lot of these emails. It's going to be us reaching out to understand, hey, if we need facilitators, how do we find facilitators to connect with community partners? If we're struggling to find resources, hey, how do we find resources? So thanks for volunteering. You just ensured yourself to get a lot more emails in the future.
Yes. Thank you, Sherry. And anyone else who's got ideas or concepts of where facilitators could come from, or training pieces, please send them to me. I know everyone's going to have a lot of questions and requests, and so the more information I can take in, I'm willing to share and get it out to everyone.
Are you, okay, so my other question is, are you tying this in with the information that was gathered during the, when you had the SBIG grants and they asked for information from the people who needed what types of training, right? So, and is this part of what you're doing now on the back end, is building this up so that people can get training, but expanding it to all the different groups?
Well, you're in our heads, Sherry. Yes, this is part of a long-term process to start creating kind of a training and business services platform.
Okay, so I just think that, yeah, I have people who I can probably reach out to, a lot of businesses who are probably willing to help. So yeah, when you get it down to where you know what you need, I'm happy to receive any emails that you can to send to my group. So I'm with you.
And that's, so when we talk about that monthly required meeting, for the community partners. That's going to be gold for everyone to come together and to talk about the issues that are coming up, the resources that are available that are really providing value, and the resource gaps that exist. And when we see resource gaps, that's where we're going to be working with community partners to say, how do we solve this? Because there's probably something out there. We just need to understand how to use it. Any other questions?
Well, thank you for your time. I will be in. Jevin is going to make sure I don't take vacation for the next month or two. Just kidding. But please feel free to call me or email me. I've got time to answer and chat, take in concepts, review email ideas of here's some facilitators opportunities where I'm happy to contact them directly, find out what their services are, who they can help, etc. So we're excited about the program. Just be patient with us that we are learning as we go. We're building the spaceship as we're flying it out and launching. Also, just remember, we want to be able to put these funds out to be most inclusive and most impactful that we possibly can. And if you do come back for more funds because you're finding a great opportunity that's out in the community, that's a need that you're fulfilling, we're excited, and you're welcome to come back and reapply. If there's remaining funds available, and it's a great concept, we would love to share it with the other partners too and see if they could help beyond that. So
can you share this presentation?
Yeah, so I had a question about sharing as well.
It will be posted to the website with the rest of the RFA information.
Thanks.
Well,
and
what about
please share.
Oh, sorry, Jevin. I'm so sorry. This is Kate again. I'm just wondering about sharing information from the monthly meetings. Like, are you going to have reporting on the findings from these things so that some of the other government entities or businesses and things can learn from the work that you guys are doing?
Yes. We will share as much as possible, as often as possible.
Great. Thank you.
And please share this with your communities. Any other organizations that might be interested, let's get the word out to try to be as inclusive as possible. So thank you all.
Feel free to share the website, the RFA, my contact information, whatever is good for you. We'd be happy to answer those questions for anyone that you share this with. So thank you for your time today.